simply clever. Servo 40 cents from Indian Oil. It's your license to fly. And Monza, the club class sedan.
The noes have it, the noes have it. The motion moved by Srimati Sushma Swaraj is negative.
FDI and multi-brand retail to say the government wins the vote in Lok Sabha with 253 votes to 218 against as SP and BSP walk out before the voting begins, but the Rajya Sabha is derailed today. The BJP sees red, alleges the government is working against the debate and a vote in the upper house.
This is called arrogance of power. और ये सरकार उसी सत्ता के नशे में चूर है.
The opposition cries foul as the motion to roll back FDI and multi-brand retail fails. The left's D. Raja blames the loss on doublespeak by the SP, and the BSP calls the outcome a moral loss for the government. Industry calls the government's victory in the lower house a turning point, says policy clarity helps India grow as an investment destination, expresses confidence that the reforms process will move faster. Good evening. Thanks very much for joining us on What's Hot. Clearly, what's happened in the Lok Sabha is the top story. That is what is hot tonight, but there's also other news that we've been tracking through the day. Here's a quick check of all the other headlines. The Supreme Court gives Sahara more time to repay its bond investors, orders Sahara to make the payments in 3 installments after depositing an initial amount of 5,120 crore rupees with SEBI. The 2 remaining installments fall due in January and February. Markets trade in the narrow range but still make it a red letter day. The Nifty manages to close marginally above 5,900 for the first time since the 13th of April 2011. It's the highest close this calendar year. The Sensex gains 43. European markets gain as China indicates it will stick with growth-oriented policies. Wall Street opens to choppy trade after Citi says it will eliminate around 4% of its total staff to save $1.1 billion a year. Well, this is the big story. The government has expectedly won the crucial vote in the Lok Sabha. Leader of the opposition, Sushma Swaraj's motion against FDI and multi-brand retail received 253 votes against it and 218 votes for it. The motion against changes in FEMA was also defeated with 254 votes against it. The SP and the BSP walked out of Parliament. As we've been reporting, that was what was expected, and that took place just a short while before the voting process began. The voting will now be held in Rajya Sabha, and that will be the key litmus test for the government and for whether this FDI retail policy will be the law of the land. Joining us now to discuss the implications of what's happened in the Lok Sabha today and what we can expect in the Rajya Sabha power-packed panel. Sunil Jain, opinion editor of Financial Express; Ajay Dua, the former secretary of the DIPP; Paresh Parekh of Ernst & Young. We will shortly be joined by Sachin Pilot, the corporate affairs minister, and of course our very own economic policy editor. Joining us from outside Parliament, Siddharth Zarabi. Gentlemen, appreciate you joining me here on What's Hot. Ajay Dua, let me come to you because the government says that it's clear, this is a done deal, it doesn't need to wait for the verdict in the Rajya Sabha. The opposition and of course constitutional experts and bureaucrats and corporate lawyers that we've been speaking to say that as per section 48 of FEMA, it needs to go through the Rajya Sabha. It has to be decided on by the Rajya Sabha as well before this can become the law of the land. As the former secretary of the DIPP, you're best placed to explain to our viewers where the truth lies.
I think, as always, the truth lies somewhere in the center of the two opinions being expressed. The government certainly has scored an important victory today in the Lok Sabha, with it getting an endorsement from the lawmakers for carrying out the amendments in the regulations for allowing FDI and multi-brand retail. That is a very important gain or a measure towards allowing FDI and retail. The question is, all subordinate legislation and making rules or regulations under the FEMA is a subordinate legislation which, as per the constitutional procedure, as per the procedure laid down in FEMA itself, says that any amendment made must be laid on the table of the two houses within 30 days, and that's been done by the government.
Yeah.
It's got its approval from one house. Now it will need to get an approval from the other house. If both houses pass it, as the government has, or as the RBI has amended, the deal is done and closed.
What happens if the Rajya Sabha were not to actually vote? Because there is the possibility of a Lokpal-like situation playing back once again. If there is no vote on the matter in the Rajya Sabha, or if the Rajya Sabha actually goes the other way, what happens then?
If there is no vote, even then it will amount to a parliamentary approval, because it's not been disapproved by the Rajya Sabha.
Okay.
The Lok Sabha has approved it.
That's an important point you're making. You're saying if tomorrow, for some reason, there was a ruckus on the floor of the House in the Rajya Sabha, and we don't actually see the proceedings take place, there is no vote, the Rajya Sabha is adjourned, the government stands to benefit, the government stands to gain?
I think so, because the regulation, the amendment has been laid on the table of the House.
Okay.
It's for the Parliament, the upper house in this case, to accept it, reject it, or leave it as it is. Then it will be tantamount to that Rajya Sabha has not made any changes in it. And one house has approved it. It can then be treated as having been endorsed by Parliament, and it becomes, the FEMA becomes effective.
Sunil Jain, you've been working the phones. Is this the government strategy? Because this is what the BJP was alluding to this afternoon when Arun Jaitley came out and said, in fact, they've asked the leader of the Rajya Sabha to explain the government's position on this matter. The BJP is saying that you are going to actually force an adjournment of the Rajya Sabha. Is this the fallback strategy because you don't have the numbers in the Rajya Sabha?
Well, you know, this is what, I mean, this is exactly what Arun was alluding to. But I disagree with Ajay a bit. My understanding of what Section 48 says is the amendment has been made. Now, what was actually being debated or being voted on was the amendment. So the Lok Sabha is okay with it. Now, let's say that the Rajya Sabha doesn't approve it, which means that you don't have an adjournment tomorrow. You actually have voting, and the Rajya Sabha says that no, we don't like this change in FEMA. Now, this section, the Section 48, requires both houses to disapprove or to not like what happened. So if one house approves of it and the other doesn't, then it doesn't matter. So the amendment stays. This is the point, in fact, that yesterday, you know, Mr. Acharya, who the former Secretary General of the Lok Sabha was making.
Yeah.
So I think actually it's a done deal, though all your lawyers have told you it's not so, you know.
Yeah,
I'm just a dumb journalist.
The lawyers that we've been speaking to suggest that it's not a done deal, and you think it's not a done deal.
I don't think so, because the Parliament has two arms. Two constituents.
Yeah, and the reading of Section 48 is very clear when it comes to that.
Both houses have the powers, because it's not a money bill, that only the Lok Sabha has the upper hand.
Yeah.
In a non-money matter, both houses must endorse it. If one house approves it,
in fact,
and the other does not.
Who better to understand this? The Law Minister, in conversation with our colleague Bhupen Chaubey. Let's just go across and listen, and he's probably answering this question at this point.
It's on the law books, and anyone can read it. And she's a lawyer. She shouldn't have a problem understanding what the Supreme Court has said.
Well, let me take this further with you, because over the next 2 days, you have the Lok Sabha victory in your bag, the Lok Sabha numbers in your bag. Over the next 2 days, this process is set to be repeated in the Rajya Sabha. Leader of opposition in the Rajya Sabha, Mr. Jaitley, has leveled a very serious allegation against your government, Mr. Khurshid, that you all are not serious about facing a vote or a debate in Parliament, which is why you are creating chaos in the Rajya Sabha to avoid a vote or a debate.
Why did he have to say it today? Why didn't he just wait till tomorrow?
Maybe because he doesn't trust you.
No, why didn't he just wait till tomorrow and say, look, they didn't allow the vote to take place? Why is he creating an atmosphere and a situation in which he will provoke people into preventing a vote from taking place tomorrow?
So are you saying it's the BJP which is responsible for this?
Why should he be saying it today? If he thinks this is what's going to happen, the heavens won't fall if it happens. They didn't fall today. So if it's going to happen, tomorrow he could have come to you and said, look, this is what I felt, and now this is what has happened. But what is he doing by creating an atmosphere of negativity even before the debate begins?
But you don't believe that there is any merit? There is absolutely no reason for us to believe that this could be a repeat of what happened in the Lokpal debate? where literally at the stroke of midnight hour, Parliament had to be adjourned and no voting could take place.
Parliament had to be adjourned now for good reason now, and if you look at what the Lokpal debate, how it's gone forward, and how the Lokpal, the Select Committee has come to conclusions, you will know why it was a good reason not to pass it then. And Mr. Jaitley has been part of the Select Committee, and Mr. Jaitley should now be a good reason to explain why we didn't want the Lokpal
but there
to go
is
back.
no reason for us.
Well, that is Salman Khurshid, the Law Minister, not clarifying exactly what we were trying to discuss over here in terms of what happens if the Rajya Sabha actually decides not to vote because of an adjournment, or if indeed it goes against what the government is proposing. Let's go across to Siddharth Ravi, because he's also been speaking with a bunch of Congress politicians. Siddharth, you were speaking with Mr. Huda a short while ago, and several other political leaders. We're trying to understand what happens now in the Rajya Sabha if indeed the proceedings were to kickstart in the Rajya Sabha tomorrow.
Well, you know, four different political points of view that we have spoken to. The SP saying that it will decide its strategy separately as far as the upper house is concerned. Ghanshyam, the MP from Jalon, telling us that. As far as Dipinder Singh Huda is concerned, saying that we expect a similar sort of situation to pan out in the upper house. To which after sort of we questioned him again on that, whether it would mean a walkout by the SP and BSP and a similar sort of situation. That is the second opinion. Arun Jaitley's sort of point that he raised, and possibly as a pressure tactic to avoid a situation where a debate does not take place. And finally the left itself, Mr. Raja, telling us very clearly that you cannot avoid, you cannot go ahead with this policy without the concurrence of the upper house, because then it could well be said that the Lokpal bill, which was not carried through in the upper house, has already come into effect. And therefore the argument that Mr. Dua was also making about two independent houses of parliament exercising their own independent opinion. At this point of time, one of the words that seems to be coming up, and I was chatting with Bhupendra Chaubey just a while back, the fact that there are cracks, further cracks within the NDA camp. For instance, the Telugu Desam party, possibly indicating that it will not exactly do what it promised through its speech, that is oppose FDI, the JM. So clearly some other elements within the NDA as far as concerned cracking away, and therefore the possibility existing that the government can perhaps muster up a slender majority even in the upper house.
All right, I'll keep coming back to you, but let me quickly get in a corporate reaction. Parag Parikh of Ernst & Young joins us. Parag, if the Rajya Sabha clears it and it is a done deal, what does this really mean in terms of foreign investors? We've got a pretty stringent policy with some stringent guiders and some stringent conditions that will have to apply to foreign investors coming into this country. Do you believe there will be takers, there will be serious players who will now look at India?
So let me first talk about that if the voting today would have been otherwise, then it would have been one more rollback of the so-called policy decision, and that would really have sent negative signals in the investor community. Now from here, if suppose the policy is given, the foreign investors will go back to their drawing boards, look at India, whether it makes sense for them to invest into India, then make up a business plan, look at whether they are in a position to satisfy the stringent conditions like minimum capitalization of 100 million, minimum sourcing of 30%. Remember, here for multi-brand it is still from small industries and not only from India. It has to be from industries where plant and machinery is less than $1 million. So I think even after they get an approval, because each case has to then be approved by the government separately,
by the FIPB,
even after they get the approval, they will have to actually scout for land, premise, set up the supply chain. So it is going to take another 12 to 14 months at least for us to see a store or a hypermarket physically opening up.
All right, Mr. Dua, let me talk to you about the complexity of this entire business, because each state can decide if it wants to or it does not want to actually allow foreign direct investment. Eventually the license has to be given out by the individual state government. Think of it from a foreign investor's point of view. They operate on the economies of large-scale supply chain. If you can only set up in Delhi but not in UP, not in West Bengal, not perhaps in Madhya Pradesh and Bihar, how is this actually going to work?
I think it's going to be a tedious affair. It's not going to be easy to get the economies of scale which companies like Walmart have been enjoying in various other territories of the world. But luckily, the approval they will be seeking of FIPB only after a multi-brand store owned by with a foreign equity has obtained the approval of the state government under the Shop and Establishment Act.
Absolutely.
The whole process is going to be starting with that, not ending with it.
And it's going to be a long and cumbersome process.
Absolutely. And there are going to be issues that if you are allowed in one state, in another state you are a domestic company. How do you treat the company in one state?
So complex structuring is going to be the name of the game once again.
Absolutely. I think there any rules or rule of this type, as they say, if you make a complex regulation, the complexities multiply several fold, and human ingenuity to answer that would be limitless.
That's a politically correct way of saying it, human ingenuity. But Sunil Jain, this is what we were talking about yesterday. I mean, leader after leader. The sense of the House was very, very clear. We don't want FDI and multi-brand retail. You can agree with the argument, you can choose to disagree with the argument, but the sense of the House is very clear. We don't want FDI and multi-brand retail. As Sushma Swaraj was saying, is the Congress going to have to face the political consequences of this come the elections?
Well, see, Shireen, I put it this way. Firstly, I don't believe in this, sense of the House and spirit of the House kind of stuff. My view is that, you're running a company, you're running anything, you're running a government, whether it's Barack Obama, whether it's Manmohan Singh, you have to cut deals. So I think what happened in this case was the government promised FDI in retail to people. The government cut deals, so it got the BSP and the SP to walk out. And I think foreigners have to be very thrilled about the fact that the government managed to cut the deal, to make the deal go through. So I think that's very important. I'm not too worried about sense of the House and stuff like that.
Okay.
I think you're absolutely right that it's going to be really Byzantine and stuff like that. Obviously, Walmart or Carrefour or any of these people would prefer to get a clean slate where we can come into all of India. But let's not forget that these are realistic people. They know that it takes 10 to 20 years to build up an empire.
Then they're not expecting profits anytime soon.
These are people who came into China when they were given city by city permits. Now they could have said that we want the whole of China, but they said no, let's go into the city. So in a similar way, I mean, we haven't had Raj Jain, for example, coming in saying that Walmart is not going to take it.
Hold that thought, Sunil, because we've got Salman Khurshid joining Siddharth. And Siddharth, Law Minister with you, please ask him to clarify this business of Section 48 and what happens if there is either no vote in the Rajya Sabha or if the Rajya Sabha decides to go against what the Lok Sabha has decided today.
Oh, that's right, Shireen. As the former Law Minister and currently the External Affairs Minister, Mr. Salman Khurshid, the first point that I want to get you, the Lok Sabha vote is behind you. What does this message go out to foreign investors? Because clearly we saw the debate as far as the arguments were concerned. The sense of the House, sans voting, was against FDI and multi-brand retail.
Well, you might say that, but at the end of the day, people who abstained or walked out of the House are not untutored in parliamentary practice. They know the result of what they were doing, and obviously, therefore, they were weighing several things together. They may have compulsions to their constituencies. They may have some calculations, etc. They may have felt that, look, let somebody else take the burden of this, and we can always step in as and when this looks good.
And the political convulsions of not going along with the BJP.
A lot of these things they would have waved together, and I think it shows complete lack of understanding as far as the BJP is concerned. To try and get everybody together, they were able to get the left with them. They were able to get the Trinamool Congress with them for, I believe, very short-sighted reasons. But for them to have thought that they will get the BJP and the BSP and Samajwadi Party together with them on this, I'm just amazed. I'm just amazed at how myopic they could have been.
So should investors therefore take the message that the situation that panned out in the Lok Sabha and the government won the vote could also pan out in the Rajya Sabha, sir? Because the question really is, as far as the Rajya Sabha goes, the government's still not coming out very clearly.
No problem. Just hold the checkbooks for another 24 hours and you'll know tomorrow night what happens.
Okay, hold the checkbooks. Why tomorrow night? I thought the vote was day after.
Well, it'll become apparent by tomorrow as to what happens, and then you'll get a day after 2 o'clock, day after you'll have the vote, and you will know. Now, frankly, we don't go into this blind. We also make our assessments. We also get feelers, and we understand the mood of the opposition that we have to deal with, or friendly opposition that we have to deal with, and the unfriendly opposition that we have to deal with, and that's how we go. We can get it wrong. Of course we can get it wrong. We could have got it wrong in the Lok Sabha as well, but I think right now the BJP has got it wrong. And
if you can direct this question to Mr. Khurshid, and this is a debate that we're having here between Ajay Dua and Sunil Jain and the other panelists. A very quick clarification: the FEMA amendment, does it need to be voted on in the Rajya Sabha? And if it goes against what has been decided in the Lok Sabha, what happens?
She's in fact giving me the...
There is no amendment. There's delegated legislation. See, an amendment would have required a vote in the House to amend. That's not what's happening. So FEMA is not being amended, but consequential subordinate legislation, which normally you only place on the table of the House, and then when the time passes, that happens. I know of cases where such notices have not been placed on the table of the House at all, and yet courts have said that amendment stands.
Okay.
So there are many issues in this. I think that we've thought this out, and I don't believe that there should be any sense in any political party, including the BJP, trying now to claw back what they have lost by saying we won't allow this to go through by 2 votes or by 3 votes.
But we will have a debate, and we will have a vote on the entire motions that have been...
Of course, haven't we agreed to that? We have agreed, and the chairman has agreed to that, and that's what we will do.
What would happen, sir, a situation where a leader like Mayawati, she rushed into the well, which doesn't happen usually, happening again tomorrow? What does the situation...
Well, unusual things are happening, and we just have to take them in our stride as and when they happen. Let's see. Let us see.
Hypothetically, sir, is it possible for the government to claim that with just the Lok Sabha approval, they can proceed ahead with the implementation of the policy, which of course the states have to do, without it passing...
That we've already done. I mean, we've announced a policy. It's required, as far as the notifications were concerned, they were required to be done, and the Supreme Court also indicated that they needed to be done. They just have to be placed on the table of the House. Hundreds of notifications are placed. You don't even know what's being placed.
Absolutely.
Because it's the actual legislation that matters, the decision that matters, and that decision wasn't needed to be brought to Parliament. But since the opposition insisted, and not only did it insist upon discussing it, but they insisted on a vote so that they could disapprove the decision that we were taking, we said, fine, if that's what you want, we are Democrats, we will allow it.
Fair distinction, sir. My final question to you, given the way your relations with the principal opposition party are panning out, including the debate, and I know some of this acrimony doesn't get carried on to other business, do you expect now the BJP to turn a new leaf as far as supporting other reform measures is concerned? For instance, the GST, on which we know, forget the central leadership of the party, individual state governments of the BJP have reservations.
No, well, see, of course, the state governments have reservations. Our state governments had reservations in FDI. You have to work around them. But ultimately, it's the leadership in Parliament that matters. And if the leadership in Parliament is willing to go through, then why would we not accept their offer? Now, as far as I understand, the BJP has given many signals that its problem was the FDI. That other than the FDI, there's a host of legislations that they are willing to cooperate in, and in fact, not only doing us a favor, but actually standing by what they've said in select committees and standing committees, headed by none other than Yashwant Sinha. So unless they want to go back on what they've said, unless they want to now change their mind about this, just as they changed their mind about FDI from the time that they were in power 2004 to now, then of course it will be for the people of the country to judge as to the hypocrisy with which they are doing their politics.
All right, Mr. Khurshid, I think there's a lot of judging that is going to happen. Thank you very much for joining us. Thank you very much. Shireen, that was Salman Khurshid making this very fine distinction that as far as subordinate legislation is concerned, and if you read between the lines of what Srimati said, it's clear the government is, clear with its strategy as far as the upper house is concerned. And as far as those specific questions which I sort of replayed also to him, he is making the distinction that the FEMA amendment does not have to be voted upon in the upper house. A similar sort of situation as panned out in the lower house, but clearly I think the final answers, the most explicit answers, will only be played out tomorrow and day after
in
on
Rajya
the
Sabha.
floor.
Absolutely, Siddharth. Appreciate you joining us. Ajit, I want to very quickly get you to comment on the clarification that Salman Khurshid made, that this is in fact not an amendment at all, so there is no question of the Rajya Sabha having to approve it.
I heard him, and I also digested what was being said. Amendment is not to the act. What was before the Parliament is a distinction was made out that in case the government had changed the rules, those required to be laid before the House, or if the Reserve Bank of India, which makes the regulations under the Act, those are required to be placed in the House. What was said was, we have not done either. We have neither made any rules, nor has the Reserve Bank issued any amendments or any sort of regulations. No, changes to the regulations. What has been done is a fourth thing, which is even below regulations, that we are clarifying the policy by way of notifications. Now the grey area seems to be, will the requirements of law be met if neither the law has been changed, nor the rules, and not even the regulations, but merely notifications, and whether the notifications require parliamentary approval or not is what a court of law has to decide. That isn't good enough.
Is this matter now headed to court? That's what it seems to look like, Sunil Jain.
This is the point that Salman Khurshid made. He could be right, he could be wrong, but he said we've done a lot of this in the past and the courts have ruled that it's fine. So maybe the last word will be of the court, but the government seems to be positive, and I tend to think that they're right on this. They say that
they're saying they've done their homework. Let's hope that they have. But Ajay Dua, Sunil Jain, appreciate you joining us here on What's Hot. We've got plenty more to discuss and debate. They will be back with us in the next 30 minutes on India Business Hour. We've got another Power Pack panel lined up for you then. See you in 30 minutes on India Business Hour on what has been a very, very interesting day for parliamentary democracy and a big day as far as India's date with the reforms agenda is concerned. Back in 30.
What's Hot, brought to you by Unleash the Hero Within.